hearing damage, brain damage, and kidney damage. The disease mimics flu-like symptoms, so it's often missed at first, and once the disease gets ahead of you, it's very hard to treat with antibiotics. The program that we've put together includes an informational packet that's going to be going to all senior and high school parents. In addition, the parents are invited to a screening of the video Getting It, a Disease, a Vaccine, which was produced by the National Meningitis Association and is narrated by Glenn Close. The National Meningitis Association is made up of parents who have lost their kids or have children who have been devastated by the disease. So we're going to be screening that video on April 29th at 6:30 in the high school auditorium for parents of middle school and high school students. And in addition to that, we'll be showing the video and doing a presentation for just the senior class. That will be on May 6th during an assembly in the auditorium. And Karen is going to talk about further.
Our goal for this meningitis presentation is to get all of the kids immunized. It's also to inform the parents and just to get the information out there. The DVD, as Heather had said, that you're just going to see a small clip on, was narrated by Glenn Close. It depicts several families and their sons and daughters whose lives were affected by this devastating illness. The portion of the DVD that you're going to see was filmed at North Reading High School, and it shows a student, Kayla St. Pierre, who graduated last year from North Reading High School. She and her family were devastated by this often fatal disease. That's it on my section.
Well, if we need to keep talking, I can let you know that Kayla St. Pierre is my daughter. She suffered the disease when she was 10 years old. She lost her legs, her fingers, and her kidneys. She has since had a kidney transplant from my husband 6 years ago, which has been successful. She graduated North Reading High School last year as a National Honor Society student and is almost done. In 2 weeks she'll be completing her freshman year at Northeastern University, where she's been very successful. Here is the video depicting Kayla.
Sorry.
As the daughter of a doctor and the mother of my own daughter, I've always known how vitally important it is to have your child immunized. It's hard to be on top of everything, but you need to be aware of the type of meningitis that can put a healthy, vital young person into intensive care, fighting for life in just a matter of hours. This potentially deadly infection is not easy to diagnose, acts swiftly, and can be devastating. Some victims lose fingers, toes, arms, or legs. Some lose their hearing, suffer brain damage or organ failure. Some lose everything.
I can't get any
That's okay. One thing that's important that people need to know about the meningitis is...
This is Kayla?
Yeah, that's Kayla.
It wasn't the flu. None of these cases were the flu. It was a bacterial meningitis called meningococcal meningitis. Fairly rare, hard to pronounce. It does roll off the tongue, but meningococcus is a bacteria that can infect the blood and the spinal fluid surrounding the brain. As a physician, a medical correspondent, as a mom, I know a lot, I think I've seen a lot, but until I did a story on this disease for the network, I was not fully aware of just how dangerous and vicious this infection is. So if you were to say to me you know little or nothing about meningococcal meningitis, it wouldn't surprise me at all. until August 24th. That's the day that Mackenzie died. She was just 18. And even as they still mourn, Ken and Lori Hartwig, who now know far more than they care to about meningitis, share their knowledge of Mackenzie's memory with an entire state. For all its natural grandeur, its mountains, rivers, and vast plains, Wyoming is the smallest of the 50 states if you're counting the number of people.
That's right.
In the Hartwig's hometown in the Big River Valley, both the population and the air lack density. Ideal conditions for viewing stars. She was so much energy, just a spark.
What's the occurrence rate, the percentage of kids in that? I think you said the 15 to 25 age group has the highest death rate from the disease. What percentage of kids contract it?
It's very low percent of kids who contract it, but when they do contract it, it's very serious. But it's somewhat rare.
How is it contracted or transferred?
That's what I was going to tell you. It's one of the reasons that age group is high risk is because of their kind of living conditions at that age, kind of sharing utensils, living in dormitories, sleepaway camps, boarding schools. Also that they're sharing other personal items and exposure to cigarette smoke and alcohol use. But it's a rare disease in terms of the numbers. In Massachusetts, there might only be, a few cases a year, a few fatalities a year. But when it hits that age group, it's 1 in 4 who die from it. And that's what makes it so frightening.
I don't want to jump ahead, but why aren't kids routinely vaccinated against
Well,
this?
the CDC started recommending, the Centers for Disease Control started recommending in August of 2007 that all children aged 11 to 18 start getting the disease. Start getting the vaccination. So that's the age group, 11 to 18.
But should the
It became
pediatricians be
recommended.
bringing this to our attention?
Well, the pediatricians have all been notified by companies such as the National Meningitis Association, and the word has been getting out, but parents need to advocate for their children to get the vaccine because not all physicians are on board yet.
Because it doesn't seem like there's many side effects to being vaccinated. It's
There's
just-
not many side effects to being vaccinated. You can't get the disease by being vaccinated. And we think that our program that we're running in a couple of years might be extinct because by then, hopefully, it will be mandated that all children in that age group be vaccinated before school entry, just like the other
And
vaccinations.
the vaccination isn't necessarily 100% guarantee, right? It's,
It covers 85% of the strains of bacterial meningitis out there.
So this is something we should be talking to the kids' doctors about.
Yeah, kids should be getting vaccinated, definitely.
Some colleges require it.
Across the board in Massachusetts, 72% of the colleges require it, but they can also sign a waiver if they
Right.
don't want to get it.
But how long have they?
Not long, like a year. Yeah.
And I know, because in my experience with 2 kids that went off to college,
Mhm.
each college required it, and in my case, the pediatrician didn't recommend it. And like you said, parents need to be informed so they
Yeah.
can.
Pediatricians are slow to get on board with new vaccines. That's very common. That's why we're trying to get the word out to educate the parents so that they can advocate for their children.
Right, because I didn't have the information to come back at him to weigh the
Right,
decision.
right.
So I think that's great to educate parents and just to equip them to make the decision.
Mhm.
I just saw Mrs. Colella in the background. I think she wanted you to ask a question or make a comment.
Comment,
Yeah.
please?
Go ahead.
Tricia Colella. I was thrilled when I was at home watching this. Currently in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, it is required for every college student who is a resident, a dormitory, or that, to be vaccinated for meningitis. And some personal experience. There is currently legislation pending in the Commonwealth that is signed by Bruce Tarr, and Brad Jones and myself, because of the experience I had with my daughter leaving for college in the fall of 2006. She does attend a private college, and it was required by that school, but also required by the Commonwealth starting that fall. And there were two problems. One was availability of the vaccine. It was backordered all over the place. You couldn't get it. Springfield College in particular, I had a discussion with them because it was a requirement. You couldn't register if you didn't have the vaccinations. They had kids freshmen coming into dorms on waiting lists. The nurses and the health staff at Springfield contacted the Department of Public Health, the Commonwealth. They couldn't get it. The second issue with it is that, I won't say all, but if not a majority, close to a majority of healthcare providers will not pay for it. And the cost of the vaccination is somewhere in the area of $150 to $175. And when that happened with my own daughter, I contacted Bruce Tarr and Brad Jones and discussed it with them that this was, in some cases a hardship to students. And Bruce Tarr did file legislation that's going to be a two-part legislation. The first part is requiring the Department of Public Health for the Commonwealth to make sure that there is an adequate supply, especially now that there is the recommendation that middle school, high school children be vaccinated. There was just an incident at Fitchburg State College, which was on the news, that a student came down with meningitis, and interviewing students on campus, they interviewed a female student who said she did not get the vaccine. She and her parents signed a waiver because of the cost of the vaccine. It's getting better because the pharmaceutical company in particular that produces it was really put up against it to provide the vaccine. And I'm thrilled to pieces to hear this coming out, because it's a devastating disease. We all, there for the grace of God go I, with our own children. But I think it is incumbent upon all of us to protect not only our college students, but I have, since she graduated, given advice to, exiting seniors, parents that I knew, to make that appointment with their family physician, their pediatrician, whatever, earlier rather than later. Because Stephanie went to college and did not get that vaccine because it wasn't available until December of her freshman year. You just couldn't get it. You couldn't get it in a pharmacy. You couldn't get it in the doctors couldn't get it. And tried to get some of that word out there. But I applaud you for bringing it forward and talking about this publicly, because it's a devastating disease.
Another question. How long, once you get the vaccination, does it last through that 10-year, the real danger cycle, the 15 to 25? Because you said your daughter was 10 when she contracted it, right? So,
Right.
Should kids at that young an age, should we, unfortunately, I don't have kids
This
that
time,
young,
the
but-
new vaccine, the Menactra, which is a conjugate polysaccharide vaccine, it's so new that they don't know what the real longevity of it is, but it's lasting at least 7 or 8 years so far. And they're expecting, that it will be longer than that before anyone would need a booster.
And younger kids who are exposed to close quarters, like going sleepover camp, boarding school, anything like that, because of their communal living, they should be immunized.
Now, is it, if one person